We're going to take a quick look at the STR market here in the Yosemite area, and we're going to start by looking at Oakhurst. We're going to step through the submarkets, and in this case, if you look at the submarket performance, we get a score of 81, which is pretty good. Annual revenue is $61,100 with an occupancy rate of 56, an average daily rate of $331.93, and RevPAR, which is $186.12, and that's basically combining your daily rate with your occupancy to take a look at what is your revenue per available night. So over here we see the map, and if we just zoom out a little bit, you can see this is Oakhurst, where all those vacation rentals are located. And here's Yosemite Valley, and over here is Mammoth, which is on the other side of the Sierras and closed via Tioga Pass all winter long. So let's just zoom in a little bit here, and we can see a couple of the communities that are represented. You can see the Oakhurst submarket also includes some of Ahwahnee here and Nippanawasi, but primarily Oakhurst, some edges of Bass Lake as well. So this will give you an idea of the location, and this highway is Highway 41, goes through Fish Camp. Right after Fish Camp is the park entrance. And then you have Wawona, which is inside the park, and Yosemite West, which are inside the park. So we'll cover that when we look at a different submarket. But what I'd like to call your attention to is, first of all, we've got a little over 1,000 STR listings here in the Oakhurst submarket. And if we click on this tab, you're going to see the highest performing listings first. So this is sorted by revenue as a default. And you can see there's some pretty amazing listings. We've got one that's doing $460,000 a year. Actually, they're doing $449,000. They're available 354 days. Basically, the few days that they've got blocked have reduced their overall revenue, but the potential, if it were available every day of the year, would be $460,000. And you can see plenty of listings that are doing over $200,000. And we can just keep scrolling and we can look at all these listings. Now, I'll go ahead and highlight one just so that you can see what you get when you click on one of these listings. So if you look at the submarket again and the high performing listings, and you're curious about one, wow, Lakeside Beauty, 6 bedrooms, can host 16 people, and it looks like it's got a lake. And we can click on this, and it'll give us a little more detail. If you scroll down, you can see what kind of occupancy they're seeing by month. It was very low in April of 2024. I suspect that listing was blocked for some reason. Perhaps the owner was using it. And then you'll see this with all these listings. The two highest occupancy months tend to be June and July. And then you can see August did quite well, and then it falls off. And then February typically is the lowest occupancy month. And in this case, it was only 17.9%. You can see the amenities, take a look at their calendar, and also some top competitors. I just want to show you, though, also, while you're on this page that popped up for this listing, you can see they're listed on VRBO and Airbnb. And if we click here, we're literally going to jump to their Airbnb listing. You can see all the photos. And one of the most interesting things is you can read the reviews. So they've got 40 reviews. You can get some information about what guests liked and what they didn't like about this particular listing. 4.68, which is not bad as an average review, but it's also not great either. Something in the 4.9s is a little bit stronger. You can see this listing is doing quite well and they're generating revenue. You can also see the comps that are closest to this listing in terms of location. Quite a range, right? This one's doing over 200,000. We've got some comps here that are doing 17,000. That'll give you a range, and you again drill down on each one of those specific listings. But I want to go back to the submarket and take a look at something else. We saw the 1,100 listings, we see the performance, and we see the annual revenue, $61,000, a little bit above. So what I want to do is just play with one filter for amenities. So if you come down here, this gives you your most common amenities, and you can either click with or without. So right now it's not distinguishing based on these amenities, and see what happens to the average if we click, in this case, with a hot tub. So we're going to apply that filter, and boom. We now only have 370 STR listings, so we reduced by about 2/3, but our annual revenue jumped up to over $90,000. So we went from 61,000 to 91,000. Occupancy, actually, I think that one popped up a little bit also, 59, yeah, so 59 versus 56, and 61 going to $90,000. So just that one amenity filter, you can see the effect in terms of both reducing competition, increasing nightly rate, bumping up occupancy rate, and delivering a fundamentally better investment. Now, while we're on the Oakhurst market, I'm also going to pop over here. This tab will bring up all the current properties that are for sale on the MLS. And what's interesting here is Airdna will do a quick calculation for us and take a look at that property, what it's listed for on the MLS, and then what it's expected to do in terms of revenue. And you can quickly see yield calculation. This isn't a detailed ROI, but it does give you a directional idea of which one of these properties might be a better investment. The other thing to think about, though, as we're looking at some of this data, here's a great example. Saddleback Road, you're looking at that, okay, it's only 399,000, doesn't do great revenue, 11.1% yield, not fantastic, but what if this was off the charts? What you need to know, and the reason you need an expert in this market, is that's actually in a neighborhood called Ridgeline, and they do not allow vacation rentals. So Airdna doesn't have that data loaded. It doesn't know that vacation rentals aren't allowed at this address. It simply pulls from comparable listings in the general area and calculates a revenue projection based on that. Again, it's one thing to look at data. You need to know what you're looking at. This one here on Presidio Way is actually one of my listings. We're listing it at $725,000. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. And the yield is 13.5 based on the 97.6K revenue projection. So that's not bad either. It's towards the high end of the range. I'm actually going to do a spotlight on this opportunity because there's some other things that can be done that would increase the revenue, including potentially splitting off the master bedroom into a separate suite. As I talked about in one of my other videos, having smaller units or multiple smaller units can actually help you manage your revenue in the off-season in particular. So you've got a range here. Like I said, these aren't necessarily optimized for maximum potential revenue, but you can see we've got a range of price points, we've got a range of projected revenue, and certainly some opportunity to increase that revenue, and in particular manage during the off-season when occupancy is lower. So that was Oakhurst. That's the submarket that I happen to live in. So I've got interest in this market, and I also do Airbnb here in the apartment that's the first floor of my house. So let me jump over to Mariposa, which is the other large market here in the Yosemite area. So jumping to Mariposa, now you can see the score has dropped a little bit. And again, they're looking at investability, rental demand, growth. There's only 378 STR listings with an average annual revenue of $51,500 a year. Daily rates aren't bad. Occupancy is in the range, again, what we were talking about before, the 56 to 59% occupancy. But again, we talked a little bit about seasonality here. This is rental growth in the last 3 years. And then here's the occupancy and length of stay based on the months of the year. So you can see, for example, occupancy, June is the highest at almost 82%. Then it begins falling off all the way to January at 27.9%. But you're going to see that the occupancy for the smaller units is going to be better than that. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the hot tub amenity that we looked at for Oakhurst. So if we add hot tub and apply, we're going to see that 51,000 jump up to 71,000. Okay, so a hot tub that maybe cost you $5,000 or $6,000, if that can generate $20,000 in additional revenue each and every year, that's going to significantly improve your return on investment. And now we drop down to only 95 STR listings. So in terms of getting a competitive edge from an amenity perspective, hot tub is important. So let me just go ahead and turn that off for now. And let's look at Yosemite. Their submarket that they've defined for Yosemite is interesting. Let me look at the map a little larger. So you can see here, Mariposa, this was the area that we just looked at. And now we're in what they're calling Yosemite itself. What's interesting about this is you really have these sort of feeder communities into Yosemite. Fish Camp, which is one right outside the gates. And then Wawona, which is inside the park. You can see quite a cluster here. And then Yosemite West, which has a lot of high-end homes, certainly some very successful vacation rentals, although the price points are higher. And then Foresta, which is also a small community inside the park. So Wawona, Yosemite West, Foresta, that's where you're going to find properties that are actually inside the park. But this market is called Yosemite, so what else is included? Okay, so there's a couple of communities here, Incline and Mid Pines, which are on the highway outside of the 140 entrance. And then, like I said, Fish Camp, which is outside the park on Highway 41, which feeds into Oakhurst. The way Airdna has defined their markets is a little misleading because you've got a mixture of listings that are inside Yosemite, which is obviously a huge advantage, a community that's right outside the park, which is also beneficial. But now you've got Jerseydale, Ponderosa Basin with quite a population of vacation rentals. What about these? So they're not in the park. They're not actually, in the case of Ponderosa Basin, or Jerseydale for that matter, particularly convenient. Ponderosa Basin is an anomaly. It's defined as in the Yosemite submarket because I guess as the crow flies, it's pretty close. But you've got to drive there, and you cannot drive there except by going around, either through Oakhurst and in Highway 41, or you could go through Mariposa and come in on Highway 140. But because a lot of guests actually like to enter the park on one highway and exit the park on the other, just making a loop, That's actually not a bad location, and it does pretty well on vacation rental, in part because it is its own kind of magical place, particularly in the winter. Lots of pine trees, hence the name Ponderosa Basin, named after the ponderosa pine. And you can, again, conveniently get to the park through either highway. And then, again, doing the loop isn't really too much of a chore, although it's going to tend to appeal to guests that maybe want to hang out at the house a little more. Again, you can drill down on the map and actually pull up specific listings if you've got an interest in, okay, how are these guys performing? And again, what are these listings doing? Here's one in the basin that does $88,000 a year, one that does $124,000 a year. So as you can see, there's some decent performers inside the basin. So let me go back up here, pull up our overview from a numbers perspective, and then let's go ahead and play with amenities as well. If we apply the hot tub filter, revenue jumps up a bit, maybe not quite as much as it did on a percentage basis as some of the other markets, but even in this market, a hot tub is a plus, and that's a common theme. So my advice for any vacation rental owner or investor in the Yosemite market is get yourself a hot tub. It's definitely going to help your numbers. So those are the three largest markets covered. There's, again, some smaller communities. Bass Lake, which is a little bit more seasonal, and in fact, I'll go ahead and pull that up. There's not a tremendous number of STRs in Bass Lake, 61 with hot tubs. And if we remove that filter, you're going to see 476. Not bad, less than half of what's in Oakhurst. And again, we've got a cluster around the lake. You're going to see actually maybe even more extreme seasonality. The lake is effectively part of the Yosemite area market. You can see it's essentially as close to the park as Oakhurst, but it's really a destination in and of itself. And I've talked to people who went to Bass Lake every summer for their whole life, and they barely knew Yosemite was nearby. So it's a destination, families go there, boating, just, again, enjoying the view. Price points tend to be a little bit higher, but you can generate some decent revenue. But as you can see, our average here at $61,000 isn't even as good as Oakhurst, and the price point for homes is actually higher on average. Let me go ahead and click that hot tub amenity on, though, and see what happens to our average revenue. And yes, it did jump up now to $74,000. So again, every market, hot tub helps. All right, now one more market I'm going to take a look at for this deep dive is Coarsegold. You can see Coarsegold is farther away from the park than Oakhurst or Mariposa or Bass Lake for that matter. But let's go ahead and take a look at those numbers, because I think it's a little surprising, at least it was to me. Let me turn the hot tub amenity off for a second. Go back to all the listings. So we've got 233 STRs, 58,000 average revenue. But I just want to show you a couple of these just to give you an idea. This is a little farther away from the park, but if you have a giant home that sleeps 20 or more, you've got an opportunity to generate some revenue. So here we've got several over 300,000, and we can scroll down and you can see quite a few over $100,000 a year gross revenue. And again, when you look at the overall number, 80 is a good score, 58,000 isn't bad, 49% occupancy is a little low, but let's just turn on that hot tub amenity and see what happens. You apply that and annual revenue jumps up to 98,000, as an average across those 60 listings that have hot tubs in Coarsegold. So that is really just to show you that while proximity to the park is good as a general rule, even a community that is over the hill from Oakhurst, farther away from the park, still can do quite well. And so if you can find a property that you like in one of these outlying areas, it can certainly turn into be a good investment for you. Again, some of the smaller communities here, North Fork, I think Mid Pines, which we mentioned, Nippanawasi. There's pockets, you can find good homes. You really have to, again, work with somebody who can help you uncover the gems and to identify the type of home that's got the appeal that will apply as a successful vacation rental. Hope you found that overview interesting. We can actually drill down into more data in subsequent videos, but I thought this would give you an overview just of the major submarkets in our market and how the numbers might differ. And again, that common theme, how a hot tub will make you very successful. So anyway, we'll get this video edited and posted soon. I hope you enjoy it. And again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions at all.